Welcome to another Light for the Journey. I'm Pastor Carl, your host. With me in the studio is Tim. Tim, want to welcome you. Light for the Journey is where we take a look at life through the light of Scripture. Also, probably getting on. I think we're having some problems figuring it out, but Larry is trying to get on. He'll be joining us too shortly, I believe. And if you're joining us for the first time and you're joining us on the YouTube channel, the live YouTube channel, I would, and on Facebook as well, I'd invite you to go to this address, discoveroakhills.com, because there you'll find the Discord. Debbie, if you'll throw Discover Oak Hills up there for me. You'll find on there, you'll be able to go to the live stream and you'll find the Discord where you can join us that way and join the conversation. And then if you'd like to join live, then I would tell you to go to Zoom. This is the meeting ID and the passcode, and you can join us that way as well. Waiting for Larry to show up in the meeting room. Let's see here. Let's get rolling. Let's throw up the scripture. We'll just jump right in. Today I preached a message titled, Do You Believe This? And go ahead and throw up the scripture, Debbie. The key verse of the message today was found in John 11, verse 25, where Jesus said to Martha, where are you going? Where are you going?
Yeah, she just moved it.
We had it up. Jesus said to Martha, I am the resurrection and the life, and whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. And then he asked this question, do you believe this? Hence the title. And so that's the scripture we find told the story. Lazarus is resurrected. Martha and Mary are on the scene. It's a funeral of sorts. And yet, probably one of the best days that they had in a long time. I had a lot to share, a lot of different perspectives. I had several people come to me after the message and said, Pastor, boy, I needed to hear that, and I just needed to hear, God, where are you in all of this? And so I got a lot of feedback on that, Tim, just so you know. So I kind of have an idea of how it went just by the feedback from our local congregation. But always interested in what you and Larry bring, and so I'm going to be quiet now. You got the floor. Welcome.
Well, glad to be here. Yeah, that's actually my favorite part of the story as well. Thinking about the fact that, this was a terrible day for their family. And, even today as Christians, when you lose a loved one, knowing that someday you will be reunited, it's still a day full of extreme sorrow. And yet, Jesus kind of turned that all around. And so here was this great day of, weeping and mourning, and it became a great day of celebration. So you wonder if, going forward, they celebrated that day as a second birthday, maybe for Lazarus, and you had made some points after telling us a story, and your points 2 and 3 kind of meshed together. And that's really, God is in charge, and he's got a plan, and we might not understand his plan, but when these bad things or traumatic things happen to ourselves or our loved ones, there's a purpose in it, and God knows what that purpose is, and maybe at some point we'll learn that purpose, but we don't necessarily always understand and maybe agree that it's a good thing at the time being, but it's maybe those trials and difficulties that bring us to a closer place with God, and then it's worth it. The suffering is worth it if it improves your relationship with God, because after all, that should be one of our key goals. Not focusing about the things of the world, although they're important to an extent, but about our eternal relationship with God.
Yeah.
And you made this in your fourth point when you talked about, and Jesus wept. And I mean, this was moving for Jesus as well. He loved that family. He loved Lazarus.
He was close to him. Yeah.
And so I don't believe it was shocking to him. It's funny because it's a play on words. When Jesus said, he's not dead, he's just sleeping.
And then he has to tell them, he has to spell it out.
Yeah. But I mean, it was clear that it wasn't like he was in a coma or something. He was dead. And Jesus spoke the words and he came to life.
Yeah.
Again.
And he's cluing them in. And I go to wake him.
Yeah.
They're good. I'm going there for this,
Yeah.
He finally says, to them, he's dead, and I'm glad that we weren't there for your sake.
Yeah.
He's dead. But he clues them in when he tells them, Lazarus is asleep, and I go to wake him, and they say, well, what do you want to wake him?
Why go all that way? What's up with that?
But what he's really saying is, I'm going to resurrect him. Yeah. I'm going to go bring him back to life. So he had a plan. He had a plan. Worked the plan.
Yeah, and it kind of, the whole story sort of makes a person reflect on, I don't know, maybe if you're some super doctor, scientist, you understand a whole lot better how the body works. But ultimately, I don't think there's a human alive that really knows what gives life. They might be able to understand the bodily functions and that your heart has to receive an electrical pulse in order to contract and pump, and then the things have to open and close in the right series so that the blood is pumped through your body, and then you've got to be, your respiratory muscles have to be inhaling and exhaling to bring in oxygen, and then the transfer happens. So people can understand the mechanics of it, but the question of what brings life, what gives life, is such a.
But the Bible tells us that.
Right, but I'm just saying. So it makes you gotta, people that say that it was a big bang, and out of chaos we all of a sudden got order, and out of non-life all of a sudden there was life, and then this progressive ordering from least complex to much more complex life just kind of randomly happened. It just doesn't make any rational sense. And so you think about life and death, and it really makes you focus on, well, God is the giver of life, and God can be the restorer of life in this particular case, and God will be the restorer of life at the end of times when we're all resurrected and with him. And scientists can't explain that.
Yeah, and so our audience knows. Let's just let them in. So I have in my studio today a fellow who's got his degree. You are an engineer. Tell the audience what kind of engineer you are again.
Well, okay, yeah, no, I'm a metallurgical engineer, so I study metals and materials
and rocks, yeah.
And well, not so much rocks, but like circuit boards and and electronics and things. But what really strikes me about this story is it brings home how completely reliant we are upon God to draw our daily breath. And it's by the grace of God that we're here, sitting here now. I traveled from my son's apartment to get here, and could have been hit by a bus, could have been hit by the train at the crossing track. Something bad could have happened. It didn't, and here I am. I woke up this morning. Maybe I would not have woken up this morning, and we don't know. We just don't know how our days are numbered, but we know that we're here for a purpose, and we know that we're here because God allows us to be here, and that should kind of I don't know, prioritize our actions, prioritize our thoughts, prioritize our attitudes, to align with those of God.
But it doesn't, Tim. That's a part of living. But it's important, I think. Like, I debated, do I preach this particular? I mean, because I preached this message a couple times, not in the same way that I preach it this morning, because it was in a celebration of life service or a funeral service. And I love this one because it allows me to share the good news in such a positive way. But here are, I mean, close. I mean, they're like family to Jesus.
Yeah.
Martha, Mary, Lazarus, and even they, Martha kind of is clued in. She said, well, I know that you're the Christ, you're the Son of the living God, and that you were sent into the world. She's grasping at some of it, but at the same time, she and Mary, said to the Lord, if you had been here, and the question that I raised was,
right.
And as soon as I bet you were, because I played that,
right.
What question is being begged, to be asked here, and the question really was, and as soon as I said it, I could see heads were bobbing and smiles, like, yeah, that's right, God, where are you in all of this?
Yeah.
And Jesus is all along, he's telling them, I told you, there's a plan going on,
Yeah. Well, I think to some extent, though, they didn't doubt that Jesus was God, but they had thought that perhaps it required his presence to be there so that he wouldn't have died in the first place.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of, in a way, putting a limitation on God. And of course, we know that there is no limitation on God's power. And as Jesus pointed out in the scriptures, the reason Lazarus passed was so that God could be glorified by Jesus performing the miracle, and so that more people could be brought to God. And so there was a purpose bigger than Lazarus and his family in him dying and getting resurrected. Obviously, it was personal to the family and personal to Jesus as well, but it was also the example of that for the greater community at large.
Would you have added anything today?
One thing you made many good points. One thing that doesn't really jump out, but I feel it, is gratitude. Because I'm if you put yourself in that place where you're at your biggest loss or biggest immediate sense of loss right then and there, and all of a sudden that gets tossed out, and now you're at your biggest high, that loss gets reversed miraculously, not in any understandable fashion, not that there was any hope that it could be done except through an act of God. And think of the gratitude that they must have felt, and how that event changed the rest of their lives. Yeah. So going from that day forward, I'm sure that they were much, much better witnesses and much, much closer in their relationship to God, understanding the depth of God's love for the individuals, but also...
It would have been interesting to have been on the Saturday that Jesus was in the tomb, to have been in the house of Lazarus, Martha, and Mary that evening, as the day had progressed on Friday, and to the following day have been in that house and listened like a fly on the wall, listened to the conversations, trying to make sense of that.
Yeah.
After seeing Lazarus raised up, I can't imagine there not being more questions. Like,
oh yeah, there's. I mean, I don't know if this is a spiritual question, but from the standpoint of Lazarus, I always wondered, did he know that he died, or was he sleeping and then he was dead and he didn't know, or he knew that he was raised when Jesus said, Lazarus, come out? Did he know that, hey, I'm dead, but the Lord is commanding me to get up, so here I am?
So there is the resurrection day, okay, when our bodies, so when we pass, to be absent from this world is to be present with the Lord. And Jesus said it in this verse, though he die, yet everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? In other words, there is life, and I don't understand it, but there's life, a spiritual life, whatever the life is.
So the physical body was dead.
The physical body, yeah, but we have a
is
soul. We are spiritual as well, and that and Jesus said it, on that Friday. He said this day to the thief on the cross. He said, "This day you shall be with me in paradise," indicating that life doesn't. It's not, because some people believe you go into this like sleep state and you don't know until the day of the resurrection day when our bodies then are resurrected and
yeah. So it's immediate. You leave here and it's not
yeah.
like
We don't get to take our bodies initially, eventually,
right.
but not initially. So anyhow. Yeah, but it would have been fun to listen to that conversation, and just been there to see what they were experiencing, what they were thinking. The whole world, obviously, Satan thought he had gotten one up on God, and then Sunday morning, the resurrection, and how cool is that? And that we serve a living, breathing God, and that the Son of God walked for 40 days, and he stayed until you have the ascension. Tells them to wait then until Pentecost, so there's another 10 days up in the upper room that they were there in Jerusalem, and so all that process. And just at a lot of, my wife says, when she dies, she wants her funeral to be a party. But I think this needs to be said, because I think sometimes in Christian circles, we think that we probably shouldn't be crying. And yet I find Jesus cried. It's okay. Because it's a reality, it's a truth. When we deal in speaking truth, it's a truth. Our hearts hurt, our hearts ache. Sin has done this. This is horrific, but it's not the end. That's the good news. It's not the end,
right.
But it is a sad. I mean, look what sin has done, and I think a lot of that had to do with Jesus being moved too. That the sin thing is playing in. He's going to be in the garden praying. Later in the week, kind of thing there, and part of his weeping, I think he was moved by a whole lot to see his friends, to see the Lazarus friends and folks that were mourning for him, and then just to see and to go through the grieving process with us, and. I just think it merits taking a moment and saying, what, it is okay to cry at funerals.
So you just said something that I guess I had was never aware of. Chronologically, this happened that close to Holy Week?
Yeah. If you read that, when I was reading, because the Passover was about, if you read that last section of chapter 11, it talks about that the Passover is about to take place. And so they're waiting and watching for him to show up in the temple. They've decided that they're going to arrest him, that he must die. Right. And that that one man died for the whole nation. And then they decided They agreed he must die. And then you read the next few verses, which I didn't read to you guys today, but in the next few verses, then it's close to Passover. So yeah, there's just like about a week that's transpiring.
Which is sort of amazing, because you'd think that this was his disciples that were with him and shared in Lazarus' resurrection, that would have encouraged them when they had seen him crucified. And most of them were...
And that's what I was driving at with the women too, Tim, is I think that it's because our minds are not, our ways are not God's ways, and our thoughts are not God's thoughts. For them to understand what Jesus Christ was actually up to, and he told them. I mean, we read in several places in John's letter, we read several places where he tells them, that he's going to die on the third day, raise again, and in fact, at one point, they're telling him, you shouldn't speak like this. I think it was Peter, and Jesus said, get behind me, Satan, and then we find Jesus there in the garden. They can't stay up with him when he's praying, and he's really, I mean, he's hurt by that. You can tell, you get that sense. But yeah, I think they just, I don't even think we get it, truthfully, completely. Even looking back, we probably have a better idea. It was a sweet deal for them in that, here's my hands, touch me. So they got to touch and feel. So that's an experience we don't have, And Jesus said, blessed are those who believe, yet they do not see. And what we know, and that's why we have a testimony, that we're to be his witnesses, is we know because of the change that God has made in us.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we have something to testify about. And it's a for real change in our lives. Has never been the same since Christ. But yeah, don't you think?
Yeah. I just, to me, the biggest part of all this is God is always around, even in our worst time when we think, where is God? Yeah, and it was in the song that the worship team did, Waymaker. Even when it doesn't seem like he's working or doing anything, he's working. He never stops. He never stops. Yeah. And so he's got his plan. We don't necessarily understand it. We don't even know that he's there working on his plan for us, but he's doing it.
Yeah, aren't you glad our relationship isn't about how we feel about it on the day?
Oh, yeah.
Any given day. Yeah. And even when we don't see it, even when we don't feel it.
Yeah. That's we pick. So I mean, once again, songs that kind of go hand in hand with the message. Yeah. Extremely
really
well.
Did Larry manage to get on?
Honey, Larry isn't even talking to me, and he never came into Zoom.
Okay. Okay. Do we have anybody on with us?
I'm not sure. It says Oregon Larry and Talapan, who is Tommy, but I don't know if they're with us or if they're
they're just off on the side. Yeah, nobody said anything. Okay,
They could
just wanted to check. Anything else, Tim? Hey, let me say this because you were talking about how we get life, but God does tell us, when He made Adam, made him out of the dirt, and He put him all together, and and then it says He breathed the ruach, breathed life into Adam. And that's God, so God gives us our breath, but it is God who gives life. That's how we get life. He puts all this together and it works, and we can understand how to repair it sometimes and how it functions. But you're right, the greatest minds can't create life.
Yeah. And the other thing is people that, some people say, well, Jesus wasn't God, he was just a good person. But, I mean, there's so many verses in this particular reading that he directly contradicts, and he basically says, no, I am God, and I am the way to God, I am God.
No man comes to the Father but through me, right?
Yeah, and so there's no, he was just a good prophet or whatever.
No.
this is God. This is God in His person doing a miracle for the glory of God, so that more people can believe that He's God.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Anything else? Anything else you want to say?
no, I was sort of.
So can you put a bow on it?
I guess my bow goes back to the Waymaker song, which is even when it doesn't seem like God is working, God is working.
Yeah.
And He doesn't stop. He doesn't take a break. He doesn't forget about us. He doesn't have to go attend something else elsewhere, and therefore He's not able to help me at this particular time. He doesn't get distracted. He doesn't forget. He doesn't abandon. He doesn't leave. He's there. He's constant.
I would, yeah. I agree with you.
So-
And I would say, we're saying it, but we're not making it a bullet statement. Let me make it a bullet statement.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That, that God has a plan for you. Scripture says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not harm you. And that God has a purpose for each and every one of us. And, and He wants to do great things. And He does do great things. He doesn't just want to, He does great things. But His desire is to do it through us, and He said that to Mary and Martha. He said, I told you, if you believe me, that you were going to see, that you were going to see great things. And so I think the bullet here is, because we're talking all around it, but we're not really saying it, is that God has a purpose and a plan for each one of us. And we fit into that. And sometimes we, like Martha and Mary, we find ourselves, wondering, God, where are you in all of this? And that's really was the question today we're saying. What you got there, dear?
Larry,
Oh,
can you read it?
No, gotta be bigger.
keeps telling me that the host.
Oh, he's having trouble getting in.
Okay.
How about your vision as a young child about Jesus?
You want me to talk more about that? Well, I wasn't a young child. I was an old guy, but in my vision, I was a young child. What do you want to know, Larry? I wish you were able to get on. Yeah, I'm real uncomfortable. I don't. It just came to me, and I was thinking about them and the closeness and how Jesus. To me, that whole vision seemed almost. It was an experience that I know I'm loved, but I still feel like it should have been the other way around. Me kissing His feet, and my wife's here. She knows I cried for a week and a half. I couldn't move past it. Yeah. It was a great vision. It certainly was an encouragement. It gave me a sense of how much God loved me. I didn't plan on talking about it, Larry. I actually find it hard to talk about. Yeah, let's call it a night. Let's call it a night. If you're looking for a church and you are in Rochester, Minnesota, not Rochester, New York, we're nowhere close to Rochester, New York. We're on the south side of town. Nobody knows we're here. We're like the greatest kept secret. We're actually, if you're going down 63 and you're headed south, we'll be at the light where Culver's is. You go past Walmart South and you're at Culver's South, and just turn up the hill. Just make a right and turn up the hill. We're 2 blocks up. That's where you'll find us. That's what we look like. I think I'm going to cut those 3 pine trees down sometime this summer. But we're located at 410 28th Street, Rochester, Minnesota. It is a great congregation.
Yes, it is.
And you will, well, you just feel like family the minute you come in. And they're the real deal. I love it. So we'd love to have you join us, will you? Well, everyone, good night and God bless.
Good night.